Nobody's fault. Parents do the best that they can. And my parents, they got married young. So they pretty much was growing up as we were growing up and just winging it. The stuff I don't get right with you, I get right with the next one. I just remember I was laying in the bed and I was like, you don't need to be mad at him. So I was basically just Googling, like, I think I typed in, like, why you shouldn't be mad at your parents or something like that. And this book popped up called Childhood Emotional Neglect. This is what, like, brought everything full circle, like, for real, for real. This is where everything started to click and make sense. So I see this book, and one of the first things that she starts off with in the disclaimer is like, before you even read this, before you look into what childhood emotional neglect is, like, the first thing you need to do is forgive your parents, because they can only raise you in the way that they were raised. They can only teach you the things that they were taught. And a lot of times parents don't realize that they're not giving their children the emotional attention that they need. There's so many, like, different factors that play a part, like, dealing with your own emotional issues, your own heartbreak, your own emotional neglect. If you're more than likely, if your parents are not giving you the emotional stability that you need, they probably didn't get it themselves growing up. And not to say that their parents didn't know what they were doing, but that's kind of like where these generational curses come from. They just keep getting passed down. However you was raised is how you're going to raise your children. Even if it may be something that you didn't like as a child, it was normal to you, so that's what you're going to pass down. And she basically started off just explaining that part, and just kind of, even though I already knew it, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't want to be mad, it put things in perspective, like, it really is true. And that just goes for relationships in general. We be mad at other people for doing stuff to us, we be mad at people for hurting us, but hurt people hurt people. We know this already. Nothing that anybody does to you is ever personal. It's about them and their wounds. A lot of the times people don't even realize how they hurt other people. They don't realize that they go and do the same things that were done to them, So that played like a major role in my healing overall. To just realize that nobody is to blame. Whether that's your parents, your ex, your friends that did you wrong, nobody is to blame. Because we all out here hurting. And we all just trying to deal with things the best that we can. We all try to process things the best that we can. We're all going through our own journey. And when you start taking things personal and feeling like, oh, what's wrong with me that I didn't get this treatment? Or, why do I always end up in these situations? Like, it ain't personal. Or I was good to that person, why did they do me wrong? A lot of times people don't know how to accept. Just like how, I would complain about men not being emotionally available to me, but then the minute I got someone that was, I played games with him. And that's the same thing I complain about in regards to dating. That men don't know what they want, that they're inconsistent. But I got somebody who was good to me, and I did the same thing to that person who didn't deserve it, And that's another thing that put things in perspective, that you can't go around blaming people for stuff that you've done to other people. We don't want to acknowledge stuff until it's done to us. It's not wrong until it's done to us. But when you did it last month, it was no big deal, So like I said, it really put things in perspective for me and made me less scared, because it's like, even if something does happen, you don't have to take it personal. I just went on a rant, sorry, stay with me. So anyway, I get this book and I start reading it, and I go to my therapist to discuss it. And this is kind of where I started to get angry with her a little bit. I was just mad at everybody, just blaming everybody for my hurt. But I was mad at her because she didn't catch it. Because the thing is, the main reason for going to therapy is for you to learn things about yourself, or for things to be brought to your attention that you don't see. And I just felt like everything that I was, like, acknowledging was brought up from myself. Like, it was nothing that she told me That's why I was saying the work was done on my part. Because if I hadn't researched, I wouldn't have found the book, and it wouldn't have, it wouldn't have gave me the answers that I needed. But I kind of just felt like, what am I going to you for then if I still got to do my own stuff? But I guess it just goes to show that, your healing is up to you. You can't depend on nobody. And I just remember, like, in my first session, one of my main goals that I discussed with her that I wanted to uncover why I had trouble with relationships and why I was so distant. Because not even just like romantic relationships, but friendships and even like certain family members. Like I have trouble like being consistent with them. I'm like such an out of sight, out of mind person. Like if I don't see you, I really be good. Like when it comes to my friends, I see them when we link up, but I don't talk, like I don't call or text like my friends in between seeing them. And like kind of the same with my family members. Like for example, I was really close to my granddad when I was younger. And then it's kind of like when we moved to Texas, we were away from all the family. It's kind of just like, okay, I haven't seen y'all in years, so now when I come back, it's not that same closeness because I've just gotten used to like not being around. And even my mom, like when I moved out of her house, I went a while to where I was like not calling her and stuff or not coming around because it's just something that's wired within me. Like I guess I'm just so used to moving around. I'm so used to like things changing and people like coming in and out, like not just my dad. And I've just kind of been wired to just accept that people come and go. And it just doesn't faze me. But that's where the disconnect comes. Because it's like, I'm just so standoffish, and I just wish I could reach out more. And then the thing is, I'll complain about being lonely and not having people, but I don't reach out to people, and I expect people to come to me, but you can't have one-sided relationships. And that's the main thing that I want to work on. I don't want it to be, that's just kind of what this opened me up to. Me being so emotionally, like, empty, basically. Hence the name of the title, Running on Empty. We're humans and we're wired to have human connection. And when you don't have that, you will feel empty inside no matter how many things, like how many material things you have. You're not going to be happy without family and friends. And without that emotional connection. Not even like romance. And the thing is, I don't know, and I still don't know what the difference is between like my family and friends and relationships. Because it's like with family or my friendships, I could be cool with not seeing them. But when I'm dating somebody, I want to be up under them all the time. I want to talk to them all the time. And I have to constantly know, like, where do we stand? I need that constant reassurance. So it's like, it's weird. It's like I don't necessarily want connection unless it's with a man. And that's something I'm trying to work on too, because, romantic relationships aren't everything. You can enjoy your family and friends too. And those are the people who really going to ultimately always be there for you, especially family. And I don't want to be so quick to disregard those relationships and then put so much weight on men, And also in the book, they just discuss like things that you would overlook that you wouldn't think. Like, for example, like I struggle with procrastination. I struggle with discipline and consistency, like in my own life. And even those are, forms of emotional neglect because, I had a lot of freedom in my house. Like my mom didn't necessarily, we were always self-sufficient. Like we could take care of ourselves. She supplied the basics, but she had to work too and she was tired. So, a lot of the stuff we did kind of, me and my brother, we kind of did do on our own. But in a sense, it kind of, like not having that strictness and that routine, like I have a hard time keeping a routine for myself. So it's kind of like you have to reparent yourself. You have to give yourself that discipline. You have to be your own parent. I was never like necessarily forced to do things I didn't want to do. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because like I said, I was cool. My mom trusted me. So she kind of trusted me to make good decisions, which I did. I wasn't wild. When it came to like parties and hanging out and stuff, I didn't necessarily have to ask to go out. She kind of just, as long as I would let her know what I was doing, she was cool with it. And that's not necessarily, like I said, it's not bad, but it kind of did hinder me because it kind of taught me that I didn't need to answer to people and that I could kind of just do what I wanted. And I have huge trouble with authority now. I have trouble taking directions from people or like answering to people. And I feel like it's because I didn't necessarily deal with that from my parents. So I'm kind of like, look, my mama ain't really tell me nothing. My dad really wasn't there to give me discipline. So who are you to tell me, what I should do? Like at work, me and my supervisor get into it all the time. And I feel like it's because he's an older man. I think it's an issue because I feel like you're old enough to be my father, but I'm like, my father didn't really discipline me, so who do you think you are to discipline me? It'd be little things like that you don't even pick up on. But one of the main things that stood out to me in this book, and it was almost scary, like how accurate it was. But because like the book is kind of set up in like scenarios, so you can kind of get an idea of, where these problems stem from. And it was basically about a girl who committed suicide. Well, it was a suicide attempt. And basically why do I keep saying basically? This one was about a girl who tried to commit suicide, and they pretty much were explaining that she had a good job, like all her material needs were met. Like from the outside looking in, you would think that she had everything together. She had good friends, she traveled a lot, she had close family, she had a casual dating life, like it looked like she enjoyed herself. But she would go home and feel like something was missing. She would feel empty inside. She would feel like, why am I here? Like, what's my purpose for being here, basically? So, of course, when she committed suicide, her friends and her family was just like, well, where does this stem from? What caused her to do this? Because to my knowledge, she's happy. And then she was like the life of the party when she would be around people, so it wasn't even like she was standoffish or anything like that. But it basically was saying how she was just going through the motions, even though she couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. It's like something inside her felt empty. She couldn't pinpoint it. She didn't know what was wrong. And it was just like one day she was at home watching TV, and she started questioning, like, why am I here? What's the purpose of me being here? And eventually she got to the point where she was just like, I don't want to be here. So she tried to commit suicide. And luckily her sister found her in time and rushed her to the hospital. So she ended up making it. But it hit home to me because that's exactly how things happen for me. And that's what scared me, which is why I went to therapy, because I was always one to be like, I don't see how people can commit suicide, because to me, like, life could just never be that bad for me to take my life. There's always somebody who cares about you. There's always, things always end up working out. Things are temporary. And I just could never picture myself making such a permanent decision like that, But I remember verbatim, like, being in my room, and I was asking myself, what's the point of me being here? All I do is go to work and I come home to this empty apartment. All of my friends have moved on. Like I said, my big thing at the time was all of my friends are married and have families now, so they don't hang out. So, I wasn't traveling like I used to. I wasn't going out on weekends like I used to. I wasn't dating at the time because I was tired of being taken advantage of. I was tired of, getting hurt. So I was single, completely single. I wasn't really keeping in contact with my mom or any of my family, so I really felt alone, and I didn't realize I was isolating myself from people. And I guess that was what kind of made me face it, because I feel like I've always surrounded myself with people and kept myself busy, so I never realized that there was something inside of me missing. I just felt like, well, I have everything. Like I had everything checked off the list, but it was the emotional fulfillment that I was missing. I wasn't doing anything that brought me joy, and I wasn't connecting with other people. And you underestimate how important that stuff is. You know, we get so caught up in our own worlds and we feel like, well, I'm independent, I don't necessarily need people around me, like I'm gonna just focus on this money. No, you need people around you. You do. And I had to learn that the hard way. You can't shut people out. You can't have surface level relationships. You need that connection. And when you don't have it, it leads to depression. You're not fulfilled. You know, you will not be fulfilled without people in your life that love you and care for you. And when you think about it, what is the point of life if you can't share it with people and you can't be vulnerable with people and enjoy life with other people? We weren't meant to live this life alone. And that was what woke me up to that. Like, why am I here? I'm just here to pay bills, basically, you know. And then also, even with my job, because I was so sure, like, I made it. I'm like, I got a good job, I can pay my bills without help from nobody. Like, I'm independent now, I'm good. Not even realizing, like, it's important to love what you do for a living. We weren't given talents to sit here and work for somebody else and to be robots and do the same thing day in and day out because it pays the bills. We weren't. That'll kill you on the inside too. When you're not doing what you was put on this earth to do, you'll never be happy and completely satisfied when you suppress, you know, your actual desires and what you want out of life. Another rant, I'm sorry. But anyway, my point is that the fact that I was able to like understand how people get to that point, that's what scared me. Because I'm like, if you let this go on, you might get to the point where you feel like you can take your life and it won't matter. And me reading that story like almost brought me to tears because it makes me feel like that could have been, I feel like if I wouldn't have went to therapy when I did, that would have been my story. Because I would have kept letting it build up and ignoring it, and it would have got out of hand. So I'm glad I got help when I did. And my point for making this video is to bring awareness, because you don't realize how this stuff, like the things that we suppress and push, like that stuff can actually kill you. And that's why they call it a silent killer. Child emotional neglect, that's a silent killer because you can't pinpoint it. You know, like how I said, I was mad at my therapist for not seeing it, but it's not necessarily something that you can see because it's on the inside. And that's why it's up to you to notice it. You can't, that's not something that you could just ignore, because it's going to catch up to you. You know, and I feel like that's the reason why people will be dealing with like addictions and unhealthy relationships and things like that, because you're trying to fill a void that you can't fill until you face. You can't fill it by yourself, and you can't fill it with material things. And when you keep doing that, you'll never be truly happy. You won't.